Welcome to the 2020 AMATIC webinar series webinar for today, promoting student engagement in online statistics courses. Our panelists today are Dwayne Day, Dan Petrock, and Annalise Sabag. This is a joint webinar between AMATIC and ASA. The views expressed by the presenters are not necessarily the views of AMATIC, and any commercial products mentioned are not endorsed by AMATIC. McGraw-Hill is the sponsor for the 2020 AMATIC webinar series. And I will stop sharing and let our panelists share. And while they're doing that, I will introduce Dwayne Day, is a professor of mathematics and statistics at Middle Georgia State University in Macon, Georgia. He is a coordinator for the elementary statistics and the statistics liaison for the MGA, Department of Mathematics and Statistics. Dwayne has been researching and experimenting with different forms of online delivery for the past 7 years. He's been in charge of restructuring both online and face-to-face courses, teaching faculty best practices for online courses, and has been part of the design of the newly online statistics concentration within the math department. Dwayne is a member of the AMATIC ASA Joint Committee. He earned his BS degree in mathematics from Macon State College and his master's in applied statistics from the University of South Carolina. Dwayne lives in Macon, Georgia with his wife and daughter. He is a bass player and loves playing music with others. Dan Petrock is a professor of mathematics and faculty liaison to distance education at Des Moines Area Community College in Ankeny, Iowa. He has been passionately researching and implementing new technologies and methods into his math courses for the past 26 years. Dan is active in professional development by presenting at conferences, designing and implementing faculty training, and redesigning online and face-to-face math courses. Dan is former chair of the Innovation and Teaching and Learning Committee for the AMATIC. He earned his BS degree in mathematics and secondary education from Buena Vista University and his master's in school mathematics from Iowa State University. Dan completed a specific ministry pastoral program from Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, Missouri in 2017, and is a part-time pastor at Living Faith Lutheran Church in Clive, Iowa. Annalise Sabag is an assistant professor of statistics at California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo. She conducts research on assessment of student statistical knowledge and has developed an instrument measuring students' literacy and reasoning skills in introductory statistics courses. She also does research exploring students' interaction and use of courses resources in online statistics courses. Annalise has adapted and implemented an online simulation-based curriculum at Cal Poly and gives workshops on innovations in online instruction and statistics. Annalise also mentors undergraduate statistics majors and statistics education senior projects focused on teacher development. She earned her BS degree from statistics from the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil, and her master's and PhD in statistics education from the University of Minnesota. Annalise lives in Grover Beach, California, but every year she goes home to Brazil to see her family. So these are our panelists today. I will turn it over to the three of you.
Hello, I'm Dwayne Day. I'm going to start the slides out for everybody. Today we're going to obviously talk about promoting student engagement in online statistics courses. And let me just say welcome all. In this webinar, we will share information on how to use various techniques to promote student interaction and active learning in the an online introductory stats class. Participants will give you an opportunity to ask questions and interact with us after each one of our presentations. So let's get going. I'll speak first, and then Annalise will come in next with collaboration on an online course. Dan will talk about interactions through a final project, and I will be talking about engagement within an asynchronous course. So let me give you a little background on what my school does. Most of our math classes we're a four-year university. And we're also an access school, which brings about a couple of other problems we have, especially a lot of our students are non-traditional students. And so it brings a different challenge to the online environment, as an asynchronous course isn't always best for those folks who need an extra helping hand. Our elementary stats classes are taught both in a traditional style, like a traditional mathematics course. We don't do a lot of the project-oriented based stuff, but we have both face-to-face and online. One good thing about our school, though, is that most of our majors throughout the institution have to take statistics at some point, at least the elementary course. The design of our online classes are always evolving too. When I first started teaching it, they were still somewhat asynchronous, but the way we used to do testing in the environment would be every couple of weeks we'd go through the course, and then they would have the online course students that were close to campus would come to a big auditorium room and take a test together, and anybody who wasn't close to campus, we had to have a special setup for them to take their tests at a testing center at another university or some kind of testing site. We have since moved on from that, and with the advent of, and with some of these proctoring services getting better, we've kind of moved towards that. But as all of you probably are experiencing it along with me, those proctoring services aren't always great, and students don't love them, and so that has its own challenges. And online and face-to-face stats is a huge part of our enrollment. We get a lot of sections of that every semester, it appears. The problems I found with online, especially with asynchronous courses, our courses are predominantly asynchronous. We do have due dates for things, but students can kind of go faster or slower depending on that, as long as they meet the due dates. But students in this environment, they're less likely to reach out for help. They just are. I have some of them that'll wait to the last minute to ask questions and things of that nature. You've got ones that'll procrastinate and not do anything until 3 or 4 days before an exam is due, no matter how much you bug them. And because of this, you have a higher probability of failing in an asynchronous course, especially for students who are non-traditional or are not good at keeping themselves on track. I don't think wholeheartedly that this is just because I think they're a little afraid to reach out, but also some of them like to, as I like to say, they like to hide behind their glasses. In other words, hide behind the computer. You can bug them as much as you want, but they're just, they may not respond to you, whether you email them or make an announcement with whatever LMS system you're currently using. And so I kept wondering, how can I get these folks to reach out and talk to me a little bit more? How can I get them to interact with me? It bugged me that they weren't interacting. And so some of the tools, and a lot of these first two tools I'm going to talk about, everybody has access to in an asynchronous course. You have your option of emailing a student, but you email them, maybe they check their email, maybe they don't, maybe they get back to you in a timely manner. But a lot of times I find they can just ignore those things. You make an announcement in whatever your LMS announcement tool might be. And then again, did they read it? Did they not read it? Sometimes you can tell with certain LMS tools that allow you to look and see if the student's done something, but if you didn't make it gradable, you don't know that as well. I have done virtual office hours, especially since the pandemic started. That's become more of a thing. And what I find with that is that you run into the same problem you do in real face-to-face office hours. some students just don't come to your office no matter what you try to do. Even if you offer to be, you can offer to be as helpful as you want, but they just don't always show up. It can be kind of frustrating, especially when you want to be helpful. What I've come up with is something similar to the virtual office hours, but what I call Q&A sessions or question and answer sessions. And I usually offer them through some kind of meeting collab tool like what we're using today, or there's various ones out there. But I want to talk a little bit about what I've done with that, what I plan to do with that in the future, and how it's worked out for me since I've started doing it. So my Q&A sessions, here's some benefits to what I found with them, and I'll talk about how I set them up in a moment. But I love it because students can just jump in and ask me questions, and they feel like it's face-to-face, whether there's 1 or 2 students in the room with you at the time, or 10 or 20. It doesn't matter. It's a nice place for them to come to ask about course content or homework. And they seem to feel a little freer in this environment, and I'm not sure why that is. Also, it's nice because you have access to a whiteboard where students can work out problems with you. What I usually do with this, because I know our non-trad students don't always have access to things that they can work out, that I can share the whiteboard with them and allow them to write on it with me. What I usually do in lieu of that is I will ask them to tell me what to do as I'm solving a problem. I'll ask them to walk me through the problem to kind of, get them to see what their understanding is. And if we run into a roadblock, that allows me to give a little mini lecture over the content and things of that nature. And also ask follow-up questions. I can even do things, especially with the elementary statistics course. We are a very calculator-heavy course there. We use the we use the calculators quite often. But you can use your screen to share those applications, such as your graphing calculator, Excel. I have class notes that I usually share with my students in my face-to-face classes. I can bring those up to share with them and write on top of them, and while we're talking, to send to them later after the meeting. My favorite thing, though, is that not all students are going to join you at every one of these things you do. So I do like the fact that you can record these sessions and upload those for the students who couldn't attend. I find this aspect very useful as students can view either for the first time, or it allows those who did attend to go back and review what you talked about, so it's there for them the entire semester. That's been kind of helpful for me. How often do I hold these Q&A sessions? I've been experimenting with that the last 3 or 4 semesters to see what worked best for the students. And I've tried a couple of different settings. So one semester I just picked a day and night, and I held a session for an hour and a half that night to see if they would join. That seemed to work pretty well. Although when you pick the day and night, it eliminates folks from being able to join more often, because you never know when they're working at night, especially with the non-traditional students who may have evening jobs. I had students one semester vote on a time and day that worked for them. That actually worked really well. Took the majority and held them on that day. And I had quite a good number of students join due to that. And I've held them this past summer. I tried doing 2 nights a week, and that didn't seem to actually work any better. So I'm probably not going to do it more than 1 night a week. What I try to do with these nightly Q&As, though, is I don't invite students from every section I have online, because I may have a section of discrete mathematics, and I usually have a section of elementary statistics. And so what I do is I hold them specifically, one for each of those classes. That way, when I'm recording them, I don't have questions being answered from different courses. I currently do not require that they come to these sessions, but I'm looking and thinking on that a little bit, that I might in the future do some kind of like perk for them if they'll join at least once during the semester to ask a question, try to get them involved, because once they've actually joined you, they see the benefit of it. And they might tell others, but if some of them won't talk to anybody else, especially discrete students, they have a tendency to stick in their own little worlds. But once they join, they see the benefit of it, and they want to come again. So that's one way to get them to do that. I've also found that some students just want to sit there and listen while you answer other people's questions. That's not a bad thing either. Although if that's the only person you get that shows up that night, it's not very conducive to your time. So in the end, has this been working for me? Does this work? I think it does. I've seen an improvement. The question I asked myself, did my pass rates in my sections over the semesters rise and my DWF rates fall after doing this? So prior, my average pass rate in the sections I had prior to doing this was a 67.75%. The average pass rate with the Q&A has gone up to 83.83%, and with a p-value of roughly 0.054, which is marginal evidence to support that it's been working. But I feel in education, any improvement's always working. If you can improve your pass rates, you're doing good. So it's been helpful. I've had students tell me it was a great help and how much they appreciated it. I've had a student one time ask me, would I teach one of their IT courses, which I'm not qualified to do. And so, you know, you kind of get to know your students that join that, because the ones that will join are the ones that are going to join pretty regularly. And they do benefit from it, because in an asynchronous course, you just don't have that loving touch that you do when you require your students to meet with you regularly. And I know some folks out there probably use one of these meeting tools to hold a class here or there. I know my wife does that. She's a psychology professor. But it's hard with an asynchronous course to get all the students to come and join you at one time. And so I found that this has been very helpful to me. And with that, I will open it up and ask you, do you have any questions? And turn it over to Annalise.
Okay, if anyone has questions for Dwayne, you can ask it in the chat. We'll wait a moment to see if there are any of those questions. I know it takes a minute to type a question in. Okay, Dwayne, are you able to see the chat? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you got a couple questions there. I'll turn it back over to you.
It says, somebody asked, do you save sessions from semester to semester to build a repository of help? I do keep them, and I will reuse them from time to time. Matter of fact, sometimes they'll become part of the course if they were good enough. So I do that. Was Q&A session in lieu of office hours? For me, yes, but they count as part of my office hours. Our school allows me to do that, especially since currently we are allowed to do all our hours online for the pandemic, for reasons of the pandemic. But yes, I'm able to do them, but they're not add-ons. They used to be, but that's changed recently. What about the first day or first week? Somebody asked, what about the first day or first week? Do you require students to meet together if possible at the beginning of the semester so you can present a sort of introduction? I do not, because I know they won't all get in there, but what I do to fix that is I record a video very much like this, just walking them through what I expect and the things that I show them where everything's at in the in our LMS, our course homepage, so that they have that at their disposal as well. I do that. Are there any websites or software that any of you use for simulations and statistics? I will let Annalise and Dan maybe answer that later, because I know they do some of that kind of stuff in their courses. Does your intro video also put in a plug for the Q&A sessions? Yes, it does. And I make regular announcements about it as well, even weekly, because some of them will forget. Sample size, we're talking probably, it's not a huge sample size. I would like more samples, but it's probably roughly about 18. Are any institutions providing resources or stipends for instructors busing resources at their homes due to campuses closed? Are instructors being all the cost? I could not answer that for everyone, but I'm sure our school does not necessarily pay us anything extra for anything like that. It's usually on our end or something we have. They do give us some software help and things of that nature for recording and doing that. But there's still some of it. It's a cost to us, unfortunately.
Wayne, just a quick comment. I'm not allowed to share the screen while you are still sharing. So if you can turn off yours, that would be great.
I can. I thought he had it where you could interrupt me.
Yeah, I can. I don't know. Something changed in the settings.
Oh, that's nice, Marion. Great. That's nice. I'm going to turn it off and turn it on to you. So hold on one second. Stop sharing. All right, Annalise, go for it.
I didn't mean to interrupt your question and answer. So are you done?
I'm done. I think we're good. You go for it. It's all you.
All right. So let's get started. My name is Annalise Sabag. I am an assistant professor at Cal Poly State University, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about interactions and collaborations in an online setting. One of the courses that I teach at Cal Poly is an intro course for social science students. And there we're still in the quarter system, so we're talking about a 10-week course. Usually, since I started at Cal Poly, I've taught this course in a face-to-face version. So every day, students will be working in groups. They would have a lot of activities to complete. Every week, they would talk with their group members. There's a lot of active learning in my face-to-face version of the course, a lot of cooperative learning also. And then a couple of years ago, I had the chance to turn this course into an online course. And I really like how my face-to-face course was working. So I wanted to bring as much, aspects of my face-to-face to my online version of the course. And of course, there is some limitations in what we can do online, but I was still able to hold to the use of certain assignments, hold still a lot of active learning in the course and cooperative learning. So I'll try to share some ideas of what I did in my course. This is a typical week of my course. At the beginning of the week, students have to either read the textbook or watch the videos. These resources are resources from the textbook. So the videos that I have available for the students, those are now videos that I created. Those are from created by the authors of the textbook. The textbook I use is Introduction to Statistical Investigations from Nathan Tinto, Beth Chance. So it is a randomization-based curriculum. One of you asked about which software do we use. For this course, I just use the applets, the Rossmann-Chance applets. Different professors might use, I think some professors use JUMP, others use R, but in my experience, I have been using just the applets from the Rossmann-Chance. So in the beginning of the week, students do the reading or they watch the videos. And then at the second part, what students have to do is they have a reading quiz, and then they need to complete 2 activities. As soon as they complete an activity, they need to upload the answers to the learning management system, and then the link to a collaborative key becomes available. I'll talk about the collaborative keys in a few moments. In addition to the activities, I also provide video wrap-up to the students. So for each activity, I create videos where I go through the most important steps of the activity. What are the concepts we are learning? Some big picture ideas, typical misconceptions, or any very important interpretations. So there is a video that I created. So those are different than the videos from the beginning of the week. And then at the end of the week, there is a homework that I call end of unit quiz that is due every Saturday. So this is what a typical week looks like in my course. In terms of assessments, I usually have a midterm, a final exam, and a project. Before all this COVID crisis, I had 2 midterms, and they would happen in person. But now with issues of cheating, I guess like we're all having the same issues, I've decided to just change to 1 midterm, and I made my project, a little bit more challenging. This is the distribution of points for my grading system. And what I really want to focus here is the collaborative keys. Through these assignments, this is how I was able to get students engaged with each other and encourage this interaction from student to student. So what are Google Doc, what are collaborative keys? Collaborative keys are just Google Doc files where I take questions from the activities that students complete, and I put those questions in this Google Doc file. Then I have certain guidelines that I want students to follow to populate this Google Doc file. So there's a couple of different ways that you can set it up. One of the ways that I do is I have, for each activity, I have a collaborative key, and it's just 1 collaborative key for the whole class. So what is the idea here? Every time we give an activity for the students want the answers, right? So the idea of the collaborative key is just making the students work a little bit to get those answers. So we are kind of creating the answers to the questions as a class together. So if I'm having 1 collaborative key for the whole class, what we do is I take all the questions from the activity and I put those in the Google Doc file. And then what students have to do is the following. They need to make a first contribution to the collaborative key, which is just pasting one of their answers to one of the questions. After the deadline, I will go in, I will look their answers. I would try to give some tips if they're on the right track, if they're not on the right track. If their answer is not correct, I'll let them know and I'll try to ask a follow-up question. I'll try to give them a tip to get them to try to rephrase or redo that answer. We never give away the answer in the collaborative keys. So after my feedback, students had the chance to go back again, and then they need to make their second contribution. The second contribution can be addressing one of the questions that I asked them, could be asking a question to me, could be providing an answer to a question that was not answered before. So the second contribution can be really broad, anything that will kind of help them to go back to the collaborative key and look around. When I set up the collaborative key in this way, then I'm grading it on completion. So the idea is if students made those 2 contributions and they're minimal, meaningful contributions, then they get the full points. So the whole idea for the collaborative keys in this setup came from one of my friends from the University of Minnesota, Lorelei, and she was teaching a bio course for graduate students, and she was the one who gave me this idea. So I decided to try it out in my class. So with this setup, this is one example of some of the interactions that I had. So this was a question about cause and effect. And in this example, we were asking, can we make a cause and effect here, conclusion? The student jumped in, tried to provide an answer. The answer was not correct. I tried to jump in, try to notify the student, and I asked a follow-up question. The student was still not sure. And before I had the chance to go back in and make another comment to help the student get to the right answer, another student jumped in and provided the correct answer to the question. Here's another example. There was a question, they just computed a p-value in this activity. Then I have a question for them, answer the research question. And this activity was, can dog understand human cues? And here you can see that 2 students jump in. They provided the answer to the question. The answer was on the right track. I asked a simple follow-up question, and then another student jumped in. So as you can see from these 2 examples, there is a little bit of interaction, but this is not what I was looking for. It's still good that students are, trying to answer what I ask, but what I wanted was students to help each other. So if one answer is not correct, I wanted the other student to jump in and try to help instead of just give away the answer. But the way that I set up the assignment was not like this, right? The idea was I want answers to the questions. So that's what students were doing. So then I thought, maybe things are not working very well here. How can I change? And I remember something very important. Laura Lay, the professor from the University of Minnesota, she mentioned that with this setup, students would jump in and they will fill out the collaborative key and it will work great. And for me, I was barely getting students to make the second contribution. And then I remember something important. She was dealing with graduate students and I was not. My students are undergraduate students. And let's face it, they could care less a lot of times about my course. So then I thought, maybe we need to change some things around. And then I try to set up the collaborative key in a different way. Now, students will be working in groups, and I will have one collaborative key per group. Something that is different is that I don't use all the questions from the activities anymore. I just use some of the questions, the most important questions maybe from the activity. And the way that it works, now students' contributions is a little bit different. The first thing they need to do is provide an answer to the question, right? So there are 5 answers. Each student needs to provide answers to each one of those 5 questions. So just their initial answers that they already submitted. Then what I want the students to do is look at their answers and compare them. Are they all the same? Are they different? Trying to have a discussion so that at the end they can come up with a final group answer. In this setup, what I noticed is a lot of times answers would be different and students were a little lost because they didn't know which one was correct. So that's where the wrap-up videos come in. So in case students cannot identify what is a wrong answer, what is a correct answer, then watching the wrap-up videos will clarify this idea for them. So when I set up the collaborative key in this different setup, I am able to grade it on correctness, which I believe that when we're working with graduate students, that's the best way to go, because then it keeps them a little bit more accountable and engaged, with the assignment. So when I set up the collaborative key in this way, this is some of the examples that I saw. So this was a question asking students to calculate the p-value. You can see that Hannah provided an answer, and you can see Elise provided a different answer. So these are their initial answers. Then what I wanted to see was some sort of discussion. And here you see Hannah recognizing, she said, we have both the same distributions, our p-values are similar, but I did it at one-sided test and I was supposed to do a two-sided test. And this is correct. The other thing that happened is Elise, her group member, said, you know what, in addition to this, you also used the wrong statistic. So she's saying you use the statistic, you use the value of 0, and here you were supposed to use the statistic of 0.136. So this is great. This is exactly what I wanted to see, students helping each other. So at the end, after the discussion, they come up with a final group answer, and this is the answer that I grade. So of course, I go through their initial answer, their discussions, and at the beginning of the course, you need to emphasize to them that you want to see discussion. By the 3rd week of the course, they're very good. Sometimes you're going to see, let me give you this example here. Sometimes you're going to see a question where there is not much back and forth between the students, but sometimes what really makes the difference is the wrap-up videos. So the wrap-up videos here, one of the students states, this is the one that really helped me understand. So it's not always that you're going to see very awesome discussions, and sometimes when the discussions are not good, there's some other resource to help the student. And sometimes you're going to see a student reflecting on their own answer without even much back and forth with their group member. That's what happened here. So a student misunderstood what to plug in when they are doing regression. Then he just looked at this answer, and then he was probably just reread the question and was able to get to the correct answer. So in all these interactions, I am not there, right? So this is students helping students. The only way I come in is with the wrap-ups and when I grade the final group answer once they submitted it. And of course, you are still going to see some examples where students might not be very clear. They see someone else answer and they're like, yeah, that makes sense, but I don't think they really understand it. So in example like this, feedback is still needed. So I will jump in the feedback and I'll try to give as much information as I can to help out the student. And if I constantly see the same student struggling, I might just reach out to the student, reinforce the idea, come to office hours. So these are the examples of the collaborative keys and how I set them up. to try to get a little bit more student-to-student interaction. And one thing that is important is if you're working, if you want your students to work in groups, make sure you give them enough time to do it. So in my course, I have 2 collaborative keys, 2 activities per week. So on Monday, they submit their first activity, and then they have until Wednesday to complete the collaborative key. And then on Wednesday, they submit their second activity, and then on Friday, they have to submit their second collaborative key. So, just making sure that you think carefully about the deadlines, and making sure you have the same deadlines is very helpful. Like every time is 11 p.m. So I don't change kind of the time that they need to submit anything. One of the lessons I learned is, be careful with how you grade things. A lot of times we spend a lot of times doing video wrap-ups or creating assignments, but sometimes students don't put enough effort in it and we get discouraged. One of the things that happened, I noticed my students were not watching the video wrap-ups. And one of the students came to office hours and she said, there are no points. Why would I watch something that is not graded? So now I'm adding participation points if they watch the wrap-up videos, and I'm asking questions like about the information in the video. For the collaborative keys, there are individual points, there are group points, and there are participation points. So all of those things is to encourage participation, but also make them accountable for a good and valuable answer. So even though there's a lot of interactions between the students, it's still very important that the instructor is present, if it is through the feedback on the collaborative keys, feedback on activities. There are forum conversations. I'm there every time someone is posting something. I'm encouraging them. I'm giving them extra credit if they have any questions, and checking in with the students. So in this way, students know that they're not just there alone with their group members. I am still there. So anyway, this is just a big picture of how I try to engage students and make interactions in my course. And I'm wondering if you have any questions for me. Let me try to see if I can go back to the chat. All right. One of the questions is this run similar to a discussion board? So this is not like a discussion board at all. This is just like a Google Doc file, as I said, so students are just providing their answers. I do not like very much discussion boards. So in my course, I have them every week just for them to ask questions and I reply, but I usually don't have any assignments. It's just a personal preference that I have. I think it's much easier to see students' engagement and like answers in a Google Doc file. I like that this does not reward a few students for answering questions and discouraging others from participating. Yeah, and I think this is the idea. Everyone has a role, right? So when you want students to collaborate, everyone needs to have a role in that idea. So I agree with this statement. I really like how in a group and in a smaller collaborative key, there is much more individual accountability too, which makes the group work. How do you ensure they do their own submission before they meet as a group? So the collaborative key only becomes available when the students submit their initial answers to the activities. So they won't know what will be the questions on the Google Doc file. So this is one way. Students could be working together to complete the activity. I honestly don't mind. I wish they would just do the whole activity together. And one thing I always keep an eye on is if students, when I see some initial answers that are very similar, sometimes you're going to see this, I go back to their initial submission, and if I see that students change their initial answers, I'll talk to them. I said, you're not supposed to change. Doesn't matter that your initial answer is wrong. So there's a couple of things that, do not work perfectly. How do you ensure that do you have any requirements on participation? I just want to see them discussion. So the participation is providing an answer to providing answer to each one of the questions and participating in the discussion. This is my requirement. Students also evaluate each other. So I give them a survey and I say, are your group members participating? If one of them said that a group member didn't participate, that group member doesn't get the points for the collaborative key. So I'm very hardcore on that because I don't want, students to be taking advantage of others. How large are the groups? My groups are about 2 to 3 students. And in my class, I have about 35 students, and I usually teach 2, so like 70 students. Let me see, can you share your weekly schedule again? Yes, do I have time to show that again?
How about I share my screen and I'll back up to it. How's
Okay,
that?
sounds great. All right, if you have more questions, just send me an email. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to all of your questions.
Is that it? Is that the weekly schedule? Or is that back here?
Right now, I'm just seeing a picture of your beautiful face using a final project to promote interaction.
Oh, I'm sharing this other one. Okay, cool. Let me do this. How about this one then? Now, do you see that?
Yeah, I don't see in
is that they wanted?
presentation mode, but I see the slide. Yes, this is my schedule: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and homeworks are due Saturday.
Okay, cool. That's what they wanted, right?
Yes, I think so. Go fast, take a screenshot.
Let me just mention that we will be sending this PowerPoint, the recording of the webinar and the chat transcript out to everyone who registered. So if you're not getting everything in the time Dan's going to leave it up there on the screen, it will be sent out probably later today or over the weekend, and you'll have a copy of it.
All right. Sorry if I advance it. All right. And there's the email. So good job, both of you guys. Really good. All right, I'll be very cognizant of time here. So I'm gonna try to get it within 10 minutes here. I'll be done with mine and then open up for questions again. How's that sound? All right, can you guys see that okay? All right, there's my one good picture of me in a suit. So I've been teaching stats for a long time. Like probably a lot of you, I'm a math person who came over to stats and fell in love with it. And one thing, as I'm a faculty, I'm no longer faculty liaison, but I'm still the faculty lead. We do have a signature course for online statistics, and that's primarily what I've been teaching. And so I cannot take credit for anything that's good in this class. I guess it's been a group effort. So I just want to show you some of those things and kind of show what kind of institution we have. So DMAC is pretty large. It's about 15,000 full-time equivalent. So it's a large, mostly community college. I don't know how many of you are in those situations. So our large institutions are Iowa State, and UNI. So we actually probably have more students in the first 2 years than any individual one of those individual universities. But we're very large geographically as well, very spread out. So we cover a lot of territory that way. But this is a very large enrollment with all different formats, and I've taught in all those formats. So the signature course is a collaborative effort with faculty that we work instructional designers and create a course, and then everybody teaches this online, uses that course. We do allow some modifications, but it gives us a good floor for all of our faculty to build up from, and actually encourages a ton of collaboration because everybody knows they're going to be using it. So we allow faculty to have alternative approaches, assessments, discussions, and we put those things in there, meet synchronously with faculty to develop and enhance the course. And then one thing that's come out is this idea of having a final project, and that came for many reasons. And I think, Annalise, you said it well. During COVID, it's even become more apparent that an alternative assessment might be a really good route to show what students, and do some more formative assessment too, right? Give them some interaction. So that's why I want to present how we're using that. And the idea is continuous improvement. So here's what we do. We have a final project. For my class, it's worth half of their final exam grade. But what we do throughout the semester is build discussions to help scaffold the skills required for that. So very early in the course, like week 1, we're using some real data to do some descriptive statistics. I guess it's been interesting considering all the the racial unrest around the United States, we had actually developed a discussion here that had students pull real arrest record data from Polk County, Iowa, and start analyzing that data and doing some descriptive statistics and showing, doing breakdowns based on age and ethnicities and all these different things. And it's been pretty eye-opening because we even have them do, so they do this descriptive statistics, they do some analysis, they create their own data sets, and then we'll even aggregate those data sets for the whole class. And we'll use that data set throughout the course. And then we'll do another one where we're just comparing them, you know, doing z-scores and distributions, comparing, I think we changed it to the average weight of their data set and comparing it to the average weight of their most famous criminal actor or something like that, or whatever, just to do some basic analysis of that. And then we'll do an inferences with proportions project. We'll have them take what is the population proportion, let's say, of African American and Blacks in Polk County versus the proportion that are being arrested. And then we'll take our real data that they've gathered and compare the two and find the p-values and do confidence intervals and then have discussions around that. So it's been really good, and it's actually promoted some really tough conversations within a statistics class, lots of interactions. But it makes them build up their skills and gets them ready. So when they do a final project, which I'm going to show, they can actually pick anything they want, make it very open-ended. We ask them to kind of come up with a topic or a question they'd like to answer. Now, we know these are introductory students. These are, you know, first semester students a lot of times. So we're not asking for anything crazy here, but we do want them to try to make it applicable to them, either their major or something they're interested in. And then we have a discussion board where they can post, and they post actually a video of them saying, hey, here's my idea or my question, and here's the way I'm thinking about getting, finding data to answer that question. And this is what the layout is. If it's in a 8-week course, it's really the last 2 weeks of the course, so about a quarter of the course length is used really working hard on this project, and it's due the final week. And then if it's in a longer semester, it's like the last really 3 weeks right before the finals week. So they have to do this preparing for the final discussion. So they'll post something, even if it's something that couldn't be answered, right? Or if it needs narrowing or focusing, the students and myself will jump in there and help guide them about what's a relevant question or how to ask the question. And then that discussion really has them work on these first 3 things: find either a published claim or a question, something they're interested in, make it in layman's terms, and then try to just tell us what population you're trying to infer to. So we're just using this initial discussion to get them to think about what is something I'm interested in, where's some data sets I could find help answer that. Will it be reflective? Will it be representative? And so this is where a lot of the work gets done, is this working with students individually or with each other. They're encouraging each other, and a lot of them have similar interests. Like there's a lot of nursing majors, or there's a lot of business majors, or there's people who are just maybe they're really interested in baseball, or maybe they're interested in COVID. I got a whole bunch of COVID projects this year, and comparing like even, you know, the morbid stuff that statisticians do, the death rates in Iowa versus another state, or the infection rates, or they may do something about you know, the average ages, or it's really open-ended. And so it makes it fun and challenging for the teacher and the students. So this initial post just gets them started. Actually, these first 3 things of the project get going on it, and then they're working on it. And some will do a video. This is a screenshot of a video. Some will make a video of maybe their work or the website. They'll just voice over it. Many times they'll put themselves, their cell phone, and they'll do a video of themselves talking about it. And I'm fine with either one, just to kind of orally present their question. And they're also going to do the same for the final results. So they're asked to do a video for the initial presentation and a video the last week. So, you know, if you post a document out there for the classmates to read, some of them will dig through it. But if they do like a 30-second to a minute-long video, hey, say, here's my question, here's what I did, here's my results, here's how I found them. Then all of a sudden they're watching a whole bunch of videos, they're interacting with each other, they're using a medium they're used to. So it's been fun to watch them interact with each other using video. So the first, and then the final project, the first part is, kind of what they did in the initial discussion. And then 4 and 5 are just, all the analysis, how they do in it, do all the confidence intervals, their results. And you get, these are first semester students, right? So it's, well, you're going to get lots of different things. Some of them are amazing, really well done, and others need a lot of work. And we evaluate them based on this, and we also use a problem-solving rubric. So we're using this final project not only to encourage interaction, scaffold the curriculum, we're also using it for our institutional goals to assess problem-solving in our students. So the our Association of American Colleges and Universities has a whole bunch of rubrics out there that they publish, and we took their one on problem-solving and modified it to our institution. And this is the problem solving that Des Moines Area Community College, the problem solving rubric, no matter what discipline, they would use this rubric, our own rubric. And here's essentially what they had it like 6 parts. We boiled it down to this. So DMAC uses this rubric. We use it to assess our project, and we create scoring guides to help faculty kind of figure out what does that look like to have a clear and insightful hypothesis or problem statement. How is that different than just having a clear one, right? What's the difference between the two? Are they identifying multiple approaches, and what do those look like? And so we've only been doing this for about 2 semesters, and it's finally scaling to the whole district this fall. So we'll have a more, and we're putting student examples of like what's an excellent, like essentially ABCD examples of projects. Faculty can use this to help guide their grading, encourage feedback, what are they looking for, and then helps refine, I guess what they'd say, close the assessment loop, help us to use the feedback we're getting from our projects to help, write the project better. What prompts do we need? Do we need more scaffolding? What help? Timeline. So we're trying to use this final project to not only do a formative assessment, but it's also an assessment of problem solving for the district, and it helps us as faculty figure out what things do we need to do better teaching wise to help students have the skills and abilities to do statistical thinking and apply their statistical skills to a project. So it becomes a very important part of our class, and it does take a lot of time, and but it's always rewarding. And honestly, when the students leave our class, that might be the only thing they remember. They remember doing that project about that thing they cared about. They did a little research on that clothing line, or on that business, or on that COVID. They kind of have some ownership of it, and they're asked to present their findings. So that's about all I have for that. And I think so the question here is, can you share the final project in Rubric? Well, on the PowerPoint, that's as close as you're probably going to get. If you contact me individually, I can probably send it to you. I'm going to ask some colleagues about that. Like I said, it's a collaborative effort amongst a lot of us to put it together. We keep refining it every semester, but I'm assuming it would be okay. But there's my email if you want to shoot that to me, any questions. And I'd be open to suggestions too. If any of you are using kind of really open-ended projects like this to engage students. It's been fun for me, as somebody's been doing it for a long time, to have something very unique, and you never know. Somebody's going to post some question, you're like, and it makes you think hard. Like, okay, how would you answer that? What would be an appropriate way? What's even attainable for this student at this level? And what am I going to expect? So, and then I don't take credit for using the AAC and rubric. That some assessment folks that know more than me pointed us in that direction. I was in the assessment commission at that point, so helped tweak it to modify it to our needs. So I like the fact that it's used both for content, it's used throughout the course. It gets students thinking like this from day one. And so you can see the growth. You see the growth of the students a lot. And So it's fun to interact with them. Is that? They're individual projects. Yep, we have every student do their own. What's interesting is, I think, like, so for instance, the very end of our course has a lot with analysis of variance and regression and things like that. So a lot of, we after we get through our inference chapters, we ask the students to really tackle the project, right? But I'll have some students that will do stuff from the very last thing. They'll do a goodness of fit test, right, for their final project. And I'll literally have a D student who will start asking a excellent question, or come up with a great idea for a final project. And they have to work their tails off to kind of get to that level. And it's fun because, you know what, all of a sudden a D student who wants to be a C student is working very hard. And for the last 2-3 weeks of this class, they are digging deep and having to essentially apply everything they've learned the entire course, and willing to meet with me for like an online office hour or whatever to get very specific. I'll host online office hours to address specific questions about projects, and the students will go back and forth with their ideas and say, well, here's what I'm thinking. And somebody will say, I was thinking that too. And where you're getting your data, I was thinking about doing this. And so it's fun for them to dig around, go as far into journals as they want, finding out what credible sites are. The final project is worth 50% of their final exam grade. So it'd be about 12.5%. The final exam test and project combined is 25%. So it's a pretty significant part of their grade. I do give them a comprehensive final exam and I weight them evenly, the final project and the exam. That's how I do it. We let faculty kind of decide how much they're going to weight this. We don't have any lockdown on that. So great question there. I'll stop sharing. Oh, stop sharing. Okay. All right. Did I answer all the questions? Cool. So like I said, I can't take a lot of credit for the final project. In fact, the best thing that happened to me was being forced to be in the lead of that signature course, and for me to solicit all these other faculty and get their feedback. And then I have some great colleagues who are like, well, why don't we do this? And I'm like, man, I really like to do that, but I'm really scared and I don't know how to do that. But they encouraged me to get over myself a little bit and do it. So for somebody, I don't know, wherever I am in my career, to get new ideas and being pushed to try something a little bit different, deep down in my heart, I know I should have been doing this the whole time, but I never pulled the trigger. And now we're doing it. So it's been great. And I would encourage all of you, especially, we're all stats teachers. So anytime we can use real data, real questions, real statistical thinking, and apply their methods and something that's relevant to the students, that's sticky teaching there. So really, it's kind of fun. It's a lot of work at the end of the semester, don't get me wrong. But man, when you get some of those good ones, you're like, man, that's fun to see growth in students, which is kind of why we're doing this.
Okay, well, thank you to Dwayne and Annalise and Dan. And if there are any more questions, you can put them in the chat. But otherwise, by way of chat, if we could thank our presenters for today for a wonderful webinar. I got a few final. So thank you for participating. For those who joined us today, if you would like to become a member of AMATIC, please consider that if you aren't already. We do have a presence on Facebook. We have upcoming more webinars coming up, traveling workshops. I think most everybody has heard by now our Spokane conference has been postponed. So the next national conference will be next year in Phoenix. The recordings of the past AMATIC webinars can be found at the AMATIC website, and I should have the recording PowerPoint and chat transcript from today sent out within the next day or so. I will put this link to the evaluation in the chat dialog. You have the QR code here. Also, for those who would want a certificate of attendance, there's a question in the evaluation where you can request a certificate of attendance. So I just want to thank, sorry. Okay, I've just put the evaluation link in the chat. I want to thank Dwayne and Annalise and Dan, and she's not with us on camera, but Julie Hansen for organizing this webinar. Thank you all for presenting today. Hope everybody got some good information. Did we get any last minute questions that you all saw? A lot of good kudos there, so wonderful. Okay, I hope everyone who is starting their semester is off to a good start and hope to see you at future webinars. Have a good weekend, everybody.
See everybody. Thanks, Pat. See you, Annalise. See you, Dwayne.
All right. Dan, I think I'm going to have my statistics classes this semester. They do a project too. I think I'm going to have them do, let me stop the recording.